Good morning. Welcome back to Dial and Speak. I'm Dr. Andrea Fanti, your host, and we're broadcasting live from now until 11 o'clock. We have a gentleman who's going to be speaking to us on the telephone. He is from the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. His name is Dwayne Siekman. Are you connected?
I am here.
Okay, good to have you. I appreciate your being with us. We try to do a lot about, as much as we can, about the issues affecting our local farmers. Agriculture is such a huge industry in the state of Ohio, especially in our area where we live. So appreciate your being with us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Fanti.
Okay, what is it what is going to be the topic? I mean, you could probably talk for hours and hours about all the things that are going on, but what is the issue right at the moment?
You know, the issue right at the moment is just been this very trying spring for farmers in the state of Ohio. The excess rain that we saw in April and May, and really the untimely nature of some of the rains has really put our farmers in our state well behind the typical planting progress that we normally see with corn and soybeans.
Okay. Now, you're called the corn and wheat growers. Now,
Yes.
You also talk about soy?
We don't. When we talk spring planting, it's farmers are planting corn and soybeans. Farmers in Ohio, we grow winter wheat. So we plant the wheat in October, November. Mm-hmm. The wheat was affected by this wet and cold spring as well. We will harvest. Ohio farmers will harvest wheat late June, early July.
When do they normally harvest it?
Wheat would be June, July for the type of we grow winter wheat. There's spring wheats grown in North Dakota and further west that will be harvested typically in the fall, much like we harvest corn and soybeans in the fall.
Okay, so I was just commenting about the name of yours. You know, your
sure.
association doesn't have soy in it, and I know soy is a big product around here.
Yeah, and you know, Ohio farmer is a soybean farmer, a corn farmer, and typically a wheat farmer. So
okay.
I can talk on a range of crops for farmers in the state of Ohio.
Okay, we all know about the rain. I mean, I drive from here to Columbus and past farms, and some of them were practically underwater. I mean, you could just see how wet they were. That was a couple weeks ago. We have had here at this part, and I think almost all over the state, about at least a week, which is great with no rain. But then the temperatures got so hot. Does that affect them too? These crazy, ranges of temperature.
Well, there's a couple different effects on the range of temperatures. We like to see these warm temperatures because you want that soil temperature to increase. Mm-hmm. You don't want to have too cold a soil because it impacts the seed, the growth of the seed. So right now, these warm temperatures are a blessing. The dry weather is a blessing because it's drying out the fields, it's warming up the soil, and it gives farmers an opportunity or a chance to see yields that probably will not be record yields in the fall just because of the nature of the late start of planting corn, but it's going to mitigate some of the yield loss that we may see if we were still dealing with those 60-degree temperatures and no rain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but the fact that the temperature went, I mean, it is crazy. This morning it was actually cold when I went outside, and yet the other day we had a record here, they said, of 93. It was 90. That was 93 in New Philadelphia, but our thermometer showed 95. Now, I realize that that's going to help dry out the soil. And is it that the plants aren't big enough to be affected by that extreme heat, so it won't hurt them?
Yeah, I mean, right now we don't have much of any corn plants really coming through the ground. If we had an extended period, let's say we get into July and August and we have 95 to 100-degree temperatures with no rain, that's going to impact the crop. We want to see, our farmers want to see, a nice consistent pattern. Of course, you can't be consistent with Mother Nature.
No.
She's not, and farmers know that. But if we had those timely rains in June, July, August, consistent temperatures across the board, the corn plant or any other plant just needs that sunlight and that rain to let photosynthesis work and produce what it's designed to produce. We could come out of this trying spring with a pretty good indication that we'd have an average or slightly above average crop come fall.
So there's still hope. It's not all doom and gloom because, that's what it almost seems like. Even people trying to get their local gardens in, have a lot of them are way behind schedule.
Yeah. Well, when you look at historical data, when you plant corn past May 15th, you typically see yields decrease, and that's just the length of the growing season. So farmers are switching to a shorter season variety that will reduce the length of the growing season. But just putting the seed in the ground is just one piece of growing a plant. And as I said, there's plenty of growing season left. But historically, we see yield drops. But 2 years ago in Ohio, we had a late planting season as well. We got most of the crop in the third week of May, even the last week of May, and we saw record yield in the fall. And that's because the rest of the growing season was ideal. So farmers are optimistic. They're always optimistic.
They have to be, or they won't be a farmer.
Yeah, and they just want to put their crop in the ground. Unfortunately, we have that window now to do that.
Let me just tell our listeners, in case they just tuned in, who you are. We have Dwayne Siekman on, and he's with the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association, and he's talking about the effect of the weather, the wet weather that we've had, and it has been. We had a gentleman on last week who's been in this area for years and years, and he's been in the landscaping business for 50 years, and he said he'd never seen a spring like this spring in his 50 years. So, when I say it, it doesn't mean much, but when he says it, it really does. So it has been a crazy, crazy spring, and it's interesting to find out how it affects farmers. If you have a question or comment for Mr. Siekman, please give us a call, 740-922-2700, 740-254-9000. Now, obviously, there's not much we can do. When I have people call in about issues, whether they're political or about, things that the government's trying to do to us or whatever it is, we have places we could call people, to contact. Obviously, this is not anything that we can do anything about. But why is it important for us to know, as consumers about this, even though there's not much we can do about it, just like the farmer can't?
I think there's, farming and agriculture, especially in the crop side of things, is so dependent on Mother Nature, and oftentimes, farmers have to put together a series of risk management tools to make sure that they're protected to stay and really to stay in business for the next year. And some of those are government programs. Some of those are just planning decisions that they make. And one key planning decision that's going to be coming up really this Sunday is a deadline for crop insurance coverage for farmers. There may be it's called preventative planning, and if the farmer cannot get their crop in the ground by June 5th, they can elect to take their crop insurance coverage at whatever level they chose to purchase, and they would be 100% covered. If they choose to plant past that date, they lose coverage each day they plant. And so there may be a case, Will, that your listeners will see fields that weren't planted, and that's primarily because they couldn't get in the field, and the farmer elected to take his crop insurance coverage, which protected him from that event that, much like a homeowner's or a car insurance, an accident, in this case, Mother Nature not letting them get into the field and plant a crop. So there's a lot of scenarios that farmers have to determine if they're going to get in that field or not be able to get in that field, or switch from corn and plant more soybeans instead of corn. So a lot of different factors. And from a consumer standpoint, what that ultimately does is it affects the supply side of the equation for commodities, corn and soybeans, and in some cases wheat. And then that also then translates into a higher price or a lower price, which then affects demand. And so a lot of variables.
And that, of course, affects the prices. I mean, the bottom line is what consumers pay. And I remember it must have been because of some weather like this. I mean, over the many years that I've been purchasing food, that, 1 year bread was very expensive. It went up quite a bit, and it was blamed on the supply and demand, which is the whole economy. Now, you mentioned crop insurance. I'd never heard of that. I come from a big city. I've never lived on a farm. I don't know much about farms. I didn't even know such a thing existed. So farmers have the option of buying insurance?
They do to cover their crop. They may have just in the case of preventative planning or getting a crop in the ground, they may have hail insurance because that's their investment that they've made, and that investment's not just the seed; it's the the fuel to run the tractors, or the fertilizer, or any other type of inputs that they're going to be utilizing to grow that crop. So they want to protect that investment that they've made, and crop insurance is really one of the best tools out there to do that.
That's very interesting. I've never heard that. And there's specific insurance companies that sell agricultural insurance?
Yeah, there's specific crop insurance companies. There's other companies. American Financial has a crop insurance component to their business. So crop insurance is it's readily available for those that need or elect to choose to purchase it.
Very interesting. Okay, I had no idea. That's, again, I say every time. That's why I do this show, because I learn about all these subjects that I have no idea about. I'm going to ask you another question in a minute. I wish we could get a call from one of our listeners. They might come up with something I don't ask. 740-922-2700, 740-254-9000. Is there anything else before I ask my question that you wanted us to know about? Because I know your organization approached us, and I thought there might be some other things that you wanted us to know about.
You know, I think the one piece, and you mentioned bread prices and wheat, and I do want to talk about just how the weather impacted wheat. Mm-hmm. With wheat flowers, and during a flowering stage and where the kernel's created, there's depending on the weather conditions, it could be susceptible to disease. Mm-hmm. And with a wet condition is one of those, or wetness, extreme moisture is one of those things that could lead to a fungal disease in the wheat, which impacts the quality of the wheat, which mm-hmm. impacts the ability to mill it into flour. Mm-hmm. Ohio's wheat is not milled into flour, by the way, so we're a soft red winter wheat. We're not a bread flour, unless it's in the non-leaven categories. But with these cold temperatures in the wet weather and then going straight into the high temperatures, Ohio potentially could have that fungal disease in their wheat, which would impact the quality and also the supply of high-quality wheat for the U.S. to mill it into products, mill it into flour to turn it into a variety of wheat products. So I just wanted to make sure that, you hear a lot about farmers not getting into the field to plant their corn, but there's a crop that's out there now that is also dependent on having consistent weather and consistent temperatures.
What do they do with Ohio's wheat?
Our wheat is milled. It's a soft red winter wheat. There's 5 classes of wheat around the country. Ours is in a non-leaven, so you can see cakes, cookies, flatbreads, okay. Communion wafers. In fact, I think Ohio wheat, 80% of all communion wafers are made from Ohio soft red winter wheat.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Yeah, so ice cream cone, the wafer cone. So okay. It's not in the bread category. We find more of the bread category wheat in the Kansas, the hard springs they call it. It's a higher protein, better milling quality.
Interesting. So anything that uses yeast, it probably wouldn't rise as well as that.
Yeah, exactly. That's essentially, that's a good way of putting that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. I had no idea. So this wheat, would this be used in pasta?
It could be used in pasta. A lot of the pasta wheat it's a durum, and it comes from North Dakota, the mm-hmm. Dakotas. So wheat, different classes of wheat are grown in different parts of the country. A lot of Ohio's wheat, it goes into those, as I said, cookies, cakes. Oreo cookies is one example of using Ohio wheat. We do export a lot of our product. The Middle East, Egypt, is a big user of soft red winter wheat, and wheat can be also a feed product.
Interesting. And that's very interesting. I had no idea there were that many different kinds, and they're used for many different things. Now, of course, we didn't even talk about the corn part. Corn is kind of my thing. I like corn. I didn't even know until I moved here that there was – I thought all corn was sweet corn. I mean, I grew up in the city, and we buy corn in the store, and it's sweet corn. And then I found out when I moved here that there was corn, that most of the corn goes to feed the animals and not people. And how is that? Do we grow a lot of sweet corn in Ohio?
There's sweet corn grown in Ohio, but 99% of all corn grown in the United States is not sweet corn. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, you're not alone in thinking that the corn out there is stuff that eat off the cob or from a can. Mm-hmm. But 99% of the corn grown is not sweet corn. It is the field corn or feed corn, yellow dent number 2, which is used for feed, not only feeding animals in the United States, but overseas, and also for the ethanol industry.
Wow. And what about the corn? What kind of corn do they use for, like, corn chips, Fritos, and things like that? That's my favorite. My favorite sin. I'm not into sweets, but I love corn chips. What kind of corn does that use?
There's certain food-grade varieties that the plant is bred specifically for those processes, and being able to mill that into a chip product. So wow. You'll see a white corn grown for chips. You'll see a food-grade yellow corn, and so those are specific varieties. And typically, companies that produce those products will contract directly with the farmer to grow that variety for them.
Wow, interesting, very interesting. Yeah, in fact, they have blue chips now, where it's like a blue corn and all different colors. That's very interesting, as I said. And we didn't even talk about the soy. Soy has really changed over the years, hasn't it, as far as being just a product to feed animals, and now people are eating a lot more soy products, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's a great source of protein, and if you look at Ohio and what farmers plant more soybeans, or more acres are devoted to soybeans than they are to corn. And oftentimes I hear folks say that corn is taking up acres from other crops, and in Ohio it's not the case. Farmers rotate that for health of their soil, also determining it from their budget. But soybeans are very high demand, not only for feed, but also from a protein source for directly into human consumption.
I think most of us underestimate the amount of science that goes into farming. I mean, we know, agricultural colleges and all that. Kids really have to learn a lot. People have to learn a lot in order to farm. As you said, there's the soil. There are just so many variables. Some you can control, some you can't control.
Absolutely, and I think as agriculture has evolved, a lot of it's focused on trying to mitigate the extremes in weather patterns and mitigating Mother Nature, whether that's through seed technology that has plants that are more resistant to drought. So it's all about that, producing a consistent product and a consistent crop year in and year out. And science is a big part, science and technology. And if you ever have a chance to hop in a tractor or a combine now, farmers utilize a global positioning system.
Wow.
They map their soils, and they determine where their nutrient needs are on those fields. So much like in a consumer, in my lawn, we'll fertilize a lawn, just blanket fertilize it across the board. Farmers don't do that anymore because that's a cost, and so they'll determine their needs of nutrients in the soil, and they'll fertilize on a variable level. So they'll drive in across the field, and the fertilizer will only be applied to those areas that need it.
We are out of time. I hate to cut you off. I wish we had a whole hour for this show, because I have a couple things I didn't ask you. I know you're good. Are you the one that's going to be back talking about the Farm Bill?
I will be back, yes.
Okay, we'll talk about the Farm Bill, but I had a lot more questions I was going to ask you about farming itself. I just find it very, very interesting. And I want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us. And I'd like to know more about it, because it's political. There are just so many things involved with farming. So we're going to have Dwayne Siekman back to talk about that and anything else we can get him to talk about. I want to thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association, very, very interesting stuff. And again, I want to thank you and thank all the farmers for making us probably the best fed, almost overfed people in the whole world. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look forward to speaking to you again.
Very good.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
We are totally out of time. On Monday, we're going to have Twin City Hospital, and I'm not sure who is going to be here from Twin City Hospital. So